The time variable rate is designed so that the rate that you're paying as a customer, whether or not you're a commercial customer or a residential customer, more accurately reflects the cost at that time of day.
Yep.
I think we all know that we call it the duck curve, but that oftentimes you see a lot more demand at a time when supply is actually pretty low. And so by using these kinds of rates that more closely align the two, you can actually see a better balance across the grid.
Within the ecosystem of how we think about deploying these distributed energy resources, there is a special concern paid, and we've had numerous conversations on the Power Up Live stage about this too, specifically the interface from the utility with the homeowner, and that is the tariff through which you pay your electricity bill. It's complex, it changes, and it's dynamic from depending on how much electricity you use. Thankfully, we have experts that are not only helping to shape the way these tariffs are formed, but have developed software to help utilities match the users and their experience to better time variable rates, and to hopefully overall reduce the load on the grid and improve the experience of the customer. Here to talk exactly about that on our Power Up Live stage is Rachel Bryant from GridX. The Power Up Live stage, live in Boston at the RE Plus Northeast, is brought to you by Conductor Solar, Encore Renewable Energy, and Solar Simplified. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, it's a lot of folks do get confused about or even overwhelmed with the data that comes in from the utility. In particular, most people don't really get a chance to pick their rate schedule. It's either assigned to them or they're not even aware that they do have options. Can you talk a bit about the ways that folks are actually beginning to understand that they have options with their utility? And how does that translate to bill savings for them in real time?
So my joke that I always say as somebody in this profession is I've been both an engineer and a lawyer in this space for almost 20 years,
Yep.
and I still don't understand my own utility bill.
Oh my goodness.
And so the point of that is that we're seeing a transition now where we're going away from just traditional cost of service rate making to more innovative rates that more accurately reflect what customers are charging and being charged for on the grid. And so one of the ways that we see that a lot is with time variable rates.
Yep.
And the time variable rate is designed so that the rate that you're paying as a customer, whether or not you're a commercial customer or a residential customer, more accurately reflects the cost at that time of day.
Yep.
I think we all know that we call it the duck curve, but that oftentimes you see a lot more demand at a time when supply is actually pretty low. And so by using these kinds of rates that more closely align the two, you can actually see a better balance across the grid.
Rachel, I certainly as solar generators and battery energy come online, homeowners can wrap their heads around the value of, especially if there is net metering available, a time of use rate. But what is ultimately driving the prevalence or increase of import for these time variable rates at the utility level?
All right, now the big aim of all TVR is usually peak load reduction, also sometimes referred to as PLR. We have an acronym for everything.
Everything.
Yeah, but the peak load is where if you're a utility, you have to make sure, right, that the lights will go on no matter how constrained your grid gets. And so all the planning is done for when you reach peak load. And so to the extent that you can reduce peak load, even by a nominal percentage, that has huge cost implications to a utility that then can be passed down through to the customer. So I feel like there's a variety of things. I spoke on a panel today about virtual power plants and how different grid edge technologies can work together.
Yeah.
From my perspective, TOU is something that can be used in a complementary fashion to align when people are putting solar into the grid, plugging in an EV at night as opposed to during the middle of the day, and making sure that we use all the tools in the toolbox to try to make this work.
I feel like there are often not just the confusions around how to read the utility bill, but a lack of awareness or understanding of options as consumers. What do you see utilities doing to make these options more accessible and visible to their ratepayers?
So we work with huge clients on both coasts and throughout the United States. But what we're seeing a lot more of is actually in the customer portal on a utility website. We are able to work with the utility to make it all customer facing.
Yeah.
So while a utility can design their rate and we can help them model their tariffs and understand what's going to happen well before it's in place, From a customer side, you can actually have something as simple as drop-down menus to say, yes, I have solar, I have an EV,
Yep.
I work from home or I don't work from home. And based on actual historic smart meter data, sometimes referred to as AMI data, you
Yeah.
can actually predict exactly what a customer will be charged under different available rates.
Okay. Wow, that is actually, is that something that that GridX software platform enables? Okay, so
It
you guys
does.
have basically built a platform that allows the utility to service their customer in a more user-friendly way.
Absolutely. And it's a way to actually consolidate a lot of different options related to grid flexibility all at once. There's a famous statistic, I think, at least it's famous in our realm, right, from Accenture, that the average customer spends less than 10 minutes a year engaging with the utility.
Right.
So the fastest we can get kind of the most amount of information in a very accessible way to our consumers, the more likely they are to know what rates are available, which most of us don't, without that kind of availability, and know their options.
So attention is the currency of the 21st century. And my question to you, Rachel, is how is GridX and your utility customers capturing the attention of the homeowner to say, hey, by the way, we have this new service for you? Like, what have you seen that worked to get the customer's attention, either to increase it from 10 minutes to something else, or to, in that 10 minutes of time, capture them to say, you have options, here's a way you can actually run a scenario-based assessment?
Absolutely, and it's a valid question. I think you're going to have a lot less engagement. In fact, I know you will have a lot less engagement if a customer thinks that they might save money. I think a lot of marketing before products like GridX were out, a utility could say, we're pretty sure, right, that based on where you live or based on some of your habits, you might save money under a time of use rate. That is a lot less compelling than what GridX is able to do, which is actually saying, we know exactly how you've used your data historically, and we know exactly, based on all of our research, what an EV will do to that, what solar will do to that, what all of it will do to it. And so it's letting customers know down with penny level accuracy, basically, what the cost of their energy choices will mean for them.
And are you incentivized to get these customers to engage? Meaning, like, are you incentivized in a way that you would even run ads that say, for example, you've seen these, like, don't buy this Patagonia jacket until you've seen this YouTube video, right?
Certainly we are not, as a company, GridX is not, but from a utility perspective, any customer engagement program that you have is only as successful as the amount of people you get to participate in it. So I think from that perspective, a utility has a heck of a lot of incentive to get as many people enrolled as possible. And what we have seen, we've been working with the Northeast utility, and in that Northeast utility, they were running a TOU pilot, and it's a perfect example of they had their normal strategies to give customer awareness, let customers know what was going on. But with the help of us and letting it be more apparent, really focusing on customer engagement strategies, we were able to get double the enrollment they originally expected and show sustained peak load reduction for multiple months on end.
What are your examples of this prosumer approach to customer engagement? What kinds of grid edge assets do you see most consumers really bringing onto their new electrified home or into this discussion that you guys are beginning to model?
I mean, by far and away so far, the most popular thing is EVs, electric vehicles throughout. We've seen an uptick across the country in EVs, and we have a growth in EV infrastructure. But more and more consumers are wondering, what can I do at home, whether it's with a smart battery wall or whatever they choose to do. But what we do from the rate side is on charging patterns. And we've heard lots of people mention that sometimes there's a concern, right? You don't want to shift your peak to just a different time of day by encouraging charging at night, for example. That can be problematic. And so with careful and thoughtful rate design, you can actually have staggered charging incentives for a utility across the customer base so that you're not seeing these spikes and you have more of a sustainable resource that the utility can pull from with grid flexibility, simply by making it more apparent to customers what their options are. And people with flexibility are going to do it at the cheapest time.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because the thing that I have been wondering is this idea of consumer behavior. Like, if someone had prior been spending, 10 minutes a year thinking about their electric bill, we know also that when folks get solar, they get batteries, the amount of effort that goes into energy efficiency in the home statistically goes up, meaning they reduce the amount of load on their home just by having the assets on hand. I'm curious what consumer behavior trends we see now that we have this new electrified home approach and the software that helps to incentivize consumers to make smarter decisions.
I think it's all focused on ease of use and customer awareness. And so the more smart devices you see, I think now, we used to have analog analog thermostats, right? That were impossible to decipher. And now you can program it for when you're on vacation, when you come home.
Yeah.
And it can vary based on your load profile. So someone that works from home is going to use their energy a lot more than someone that works in a traditional office setting and things like that. So I think it's twofold. Is one, you're seeing a lot more of smart device interaction. Customers can set it and forget it, which is a huge incentive. We have several companies that we work with that are very successful in that space and generating home energy reports and letting you see exactly what that is costing you. And then on our side, it's allowing sort of in that customer portal on a website for a customer to easily see within a couple seconds, here's the rate I'm on and what I'm paying. Here's what I could pay should I change my rate structure.
Why do we still see certain utilities, I'll say stuck in the Stone Ages, not working on time variable rates? So what's the underlying driver that prevents that sort of this evolution at a utility level?
I think, I would hope it was just a lack of understanding or maybe not knowing how effective or how sustainable the load shift would be. I think people are resistant to invest in something if they think that it's kind of a fleeting trend and might not be sustainable. And that's why what I said earlier, when we work with the Northeast utilities most recent. We have several of these examples, but with proper customer engagement. And by engagement, I mean letting customers see exactly what the impact to their bill is based on their day-to-day choices, whether or not it's, shifting your laundry pattern all the way to when you charge an EV. Customers will continue to engage in that. And if you keep your enrollment rates high in TOU programs, or if you're in a state that ends up going to default TOU, you'll actually see a sustained peak load reduction that then can have a variety of very good impacts on a utility, whether it's reduced fuel costs, reduced peaking plants, like whatever it is. That's a tangible value that can be seen at all levels of a utility.
I think that underlying this is a growing question of not just like what's the logical evolution of our understanding around how energy efficiency and grid edge services and distributed energy resources can benefit both the consumer and the utility, but is there a meta rationale for incentivizing this behavior that allows us to achieve our carbon reduction goals, or that allows us to scale at a pace that we otherwise would not be able to scale?
To me, you want to avoid infrastructure. We've shifted and I hate the word paradigm, so I won't say paradigm, but we've shifted the paradigm from like traditional capital recovery being the one way for utility rate cases to make money, to more of an interest now where we're actually wanting to avoid duplicative infrastructure, we're wanting to achieve net zero goals, but we also know that we have more load coming online than we've ever seen before. So how do you accommodate growing load with an existing infrastructure in a way that preserves costs for customers, but also keeps the lights on? And so you have grid flexibility is the most low-hanging, I said it's like most low-hanging fruit you have. And it's, to Kat Burnham's point earlier, it's immediately deployable. So if you actually need another transmission line, I wish you the best of luck, but that's going to take a while and it's extraordinarily expensive. Whereas if you can say, hey, if this whole community puts solar up, we get everybody on an innovative rate structure that times when we're going to pull from you and how we're going to compensate you. And we'll streamline billing, so you'll want to participate. We'll streamline incentives. We'll do everything. Then we don't have to build as much.
Well, we're grateful that companies like GridX are finally helping to figure out how to communicate and translate a very complex algorithm of decisions into effectively, as you said, a drop-down menu, choose your adventure with your utility based on the decisions you want to make at your home, and your utility is saying, well, if you choose this, then we can do that. Fascinating.
Absolutely. Customers deserve simplicity.
Finally, and the customers deserve to win.
100%. Thank you for having us.
And thank you for everything you're doing at GridX.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
All right.